Year ago, February 8th, 2017, Nick Cruz was transferred out of Stoneman Douglas High School, the high school that he's going to shoot up a year later. He bounced between three alternative schools, most recently Rock Island OCLC in Oakland Park. On Valentine's Day, he's 19, and he was not at the Oakland Park school. He was not at the Rock Island OCLC, which is an adult school for him to get his GED. Instead, he said that he doesn't go to school on Valentine's Day. The family, which I don't blame the family whatsoever. This Nick Cruz, seemed like he totally set this up to where he was going to do it totally on his own. And so I don't see how they could have seen anything like this happening. But it's, what a sneaky little character, right? So he says he doesn't want to go, but he's admitted guilt. He could face the death penalty. When he was 3 years old, he was in a school that's named after a Confederate soldier, because the South has, especially in Florida, all over the place, Confederate shit. This is an actual school that's, Stoneman Douglas was an environmentalist. So she was a good, a model citizen to aspire to be like. Now, as early as 3 years old, Nicholas Cruz was diagnosed as developmentally disabled. So he could be crazy. It says he's got autism, and it says he's got bouts with depression. They also said Department of Children and Families said he was afflicted with a brain disorder marked by bouts of hyperactivity. So that ADHD, he's being a kid, and difficulty paying attention. That's called being a millennial and raised on computer screens. So autism, he's got brain disorder, something when he's 3 years old, developmentally disabled. So some of the stuff that he actually has, they claim that he's done is really outside the realm of, there was one kid that said he was a good kid. He was a good kid. I saw him in class. He didn't really do much. He was into this and that. And then there was a teacher that said he was a good kid too. He said that he got an email saying, watch out for him. But in his class, he said he was a good kid. So that's my guess, is essentially most of the time, right? He's not saying, not doing anything. And then overall, America, we're doing okay if you think about, anyways. So he took medicine. He had counselors who worked with him at his school and his home. And then one of the Broward County's chief assistant public defenders said that he needed more. Although Cruz had a supportive mother, he didn't have enough. So that's, way to catch that now. At one point, according to the 2016 state report, crisis workers from Henderson Behavioral Health, a major mental health center, were more bump stocks. Now, at least Trump has indicated that we're going to get rid of bump stocks. So guess what? We're going to get gun control. Under the gun control president, under a Republican president, which is a major reversal. And so this is exciting. For the left, I don't really agree with this issue. It reeks of privilege to me. I think that we need to arm the homeless. You really want gun control? Then put a bunch of AK-47s in the arms of the homeless. That'll get rid of the homeless problem because, immediately we're going to get them some housing, right? We got to take care of them now. Holy crap. They might hate us, my God, and then if they hate us, they might use them guns, right? So the homeless, but see, that's white middle class. The homelessness issue isn't faced right in front of them. They can go ahead and tolerate 500,000 Americans being homeless. They're okay with that. That's a death sentence. Poverty is a death sentence. War is a death sentence when you're being bombed for Palestinians. White middle class, bump stocks, he's indicated, also consolidating background reports. So we're going to go ahead and make sure the NICS, NICS, right, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, is up to date, and try to put incentives or try to get some sort of plan where the states are actually telling this federal program what is up and what's going on. So we're going to consolidate power. We're going to get all the information into this NICS system. And who's running the NICS? I think that's important too. So it's the system is for the Brady bill, right? You got 3 days for them to say no, and if there's no, then they get to go ahead and buy it. It's also instantaneous, so it can come right back. So the FBI, they're the ones is running this thing since 1998. It was mandated in 93 under the Brady bill, and then 98, right? The FBI, the great FBI, the same FBI that told MLK to go kill himself, the same FBI that killed Fred Hampton. Führer is doing what your imperial overlord is trying to pull, the man who's got billions and billions upon of nuclear weapons, sitting on an arsenal of nuclear weapons. He wants to consolidate. He wants to require the states to produce an implementation plan focusing on uploading all gun purchaser information to the background check system and hold federal agencies accountable if they fail to record it. So there, he's trying to do something with the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. After the prospective buyer completes the appropriate form, the holder of the Federal Firearms License, FFL, initiates the background check by phone or computer. Wait, who's giving out the Federal Firearms Licenses? These stores, they're stockpiling, right? They got like a whole bunch of AK-47s, a gun store. So most checks are determined within minutes, but the FBI has up to 3 business days to make a determination. After that, the transfer may legally proceed anyways. So wouldn't have allowed Tesla to own any weapons, or Martin Luther King Jr., the prophet of nonviolence, he wouldn't be allowed to own a weapon. Pete Seeger, he wasn't allowed to fight for the military because he was against fascism. He was an anti-fascist, so therefore the FBI fought Pete Seeger to make sure he couldn't join the military. And then Fred Hampton was straight up politically assassinated. So these are some leftist folks. The Waco, there's a right group, right? The ATF eventually gets, sucked up into the FBI, but David Koresh was right, that you have to go to the door and say, here's the charges and here's the authority. If you just come in like it's a military, they could have just picked him up when he was, out and about jogging around. But that's not what the militarized police want to do. They want to go ahead and just, destroy what he was, the compound, right? That little cult thing. Now, you might say, well, that's David Koresh. Well, what about Martin Luther King Jr.? He got shot, right? He needed a gun. Martin Luther King Jr. Anytime these prophets of peace, right? Martin Luther King says we need to be peaceful. Gandhi says we need to be peace. Robert Kennedy, let's be peaceful. Fred Hampton was also about peace too. Bam, 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 right through their head. And the FBI was there on the scene. Martin Luther King got shot in the head. The FBI was like, oh, we're here. Wait, why were you all here? Were you all the ones that did it? And there was a conviction. The government was responsible in a 1999 civil case. Martin Luther King III doesn't believe that the guy behind bars is the one that actually did it. So this does reek of privilege to me. If they use the same power, right, you guys are being a bunch of fucking assholes and you're bullying people, so that's, fine. You got your way and this is getting into policy. Now, can you get some universal health care? Can you stop homelessness? 500,000 Americans are just sleeping on the goddamn street. The YouTube video that was banned, I did read off the names of the Iraqi veterans that had died. There was 11 Iraqi veterans, and I named their names. You will be remembered. I read all the names to the victims of the Parkland shooting. So this is just a hater. I am being very, this is so sober, and for anybody to be like, oh, maybe that's the reason, right? You're not supposed to take each other serious. We're not supposed to listen to each other, right? America, we're supposed to ignore each other, mock each other, laugh at each other, ostracize each other, and poke each other. And if we're getting beat up in our homes, not to give a shit about each other, to allow violence to happen for years upon years, because you're not worthy of dignity and respect. But if you're a mass murderer, James Holmes doesn't get spanked anymore. We only spank the children. We don't spank the adults. Right? James Holmes, he'll never get spanked ever. If he got spanked when he was a kid, he won't ever get spanked again. Trevor Noah, John Oliver, Pierce Morgan, Chelsea Handler said everybody hated Pierce Morgan. Well, that's why everybody hates you. You got Jim Jeffries. So all these outsiders, right, all these British, South African, all these outsider foreigners essentially saying, America, this is how you're supposed to run your country. This is how you're supposed to live. How would you know? What do you know about America? Now, Jimmy Kimmel, again, he's going to get up there and he's going to cry. And he cried about health care, but we didn't get health care, right? Well, that's because Jimmy Kimmel doesn't need health care. That doesn't affect Jimmy Kimmel, right? He already cried. He already did everything he was going to do. Since he can afford health care, that's not something that he's going to worry about. But he bullies people, and he is worried about him bullying somebody that might, get him later. So he could understand that. He was like, oh, my God, all that, I've been shitty for most of my life. Somebody might, I might have pissed somebody off. I might have pushed him too. He was 68 years old. She died of the common flu. He should be mourning, and somebody needs to teach him to mourn, And if he was sad about that, which I would think that he was, that's what a lot of people are saying this was probably about. It just set him off. And, she was the only one that kind of gave a shit about him, and now there's nobody that gives a shit about him. So Jimmy Kimmel, He's wealthy. He's rich, right? He can afford a lawyer. He doesn't have to worry about police brutality. That's not an issue. He doesn't care about the war on drugs and militarized police. He can afford lawyers. He's got health care. You know, he's totally fine. The guns that are in society right now, the guns in the hands of the police officer, are on Jimmy Kimmel's side. He's got, you know, he can pay for the lawyers. He's got the judicial system will work in his favor. So therefore, the police, the service of the police will definitely benefit Jimmy Kimmel. He feels safe with them. He feels it's okay that they have all the weapons. Now, I want to have, you know, America, I want that, need that comfort. I won't ever get it, and I do believe I'm mature enough to essentially, it's a John Lennon song, nobody loves you when you're down and out. Nobody loves you when you're down and out. And so that's just something to understand. People are just, you know, especially in dog-eat-dog capitalistic America, if you don't have a penny to your name, you're nobody, right? So my life matters. You can believe that if you want to. I would like for you to. You know, I've basically been saying, hey, somebody give a damn, you know, my entire life. But I need for society to commit to my life. My life matters, and if I'm victimized, I need a system that will aim for justice. I don't have that. And that's, you know, I recognize the situation that I'm in. My life matters. Like, I know that it's true. So I don't need the validation. I would just like to live in a society that recognizes that also. But when you got sheriffs in Tennessee killing people, my life is worth a quarter. He was bragging. See sheriff give the call, kill that man. Now execute him. What, he's got a traffic violation? He's on the street? There was nobody else on the interstate. It wasn't a danger to anybody else. They were handling him. He was off the side of the road, so the danger was over and done with. But he killed him anyways. And then the deputy was crying, and the Tennessee sheriff says, I love this shit. That's what the sheriff was saying. When he kills innocent men, you know, my life is worth a quarter. My life is worth a quarter. That guy didn't need to die, but the sheriff says he loves this shit, and what's America going to do? Are we going to put anybody on trial? You got a dead body. There's a probable cause a crime happened. Somebody could be charged with the crime. Do you have a prosecutor in Tennessee? Do you have attorney general in Tennessee? Do you have another police officer in Tennessee that will arrest that murderer? He murdered a man. Put him on trial. If he was totally innocent and he was threatening, let's hear a jury of his peers say that he was acceptable. That's how the criminal justice system is essentially one big slaughterhouse. Look at all the people that's eating, right? You got rapist jailers who's going to be eating, all those cops. You have the prosecutors. You got public defender. You got the judges, the media. You got Ben Shapiro. You got Jimmy Kimmel. Look at everybody. God, so many people are eating off of this case. Yeah, oh my God, this is such a horrible thing, but then why are you so fixated on it? Why are you paying so much? So Jimmy Kimmel, he doesn't understand that, you know, police brutality happens. That's not going to be an issue he gives a shit about. He's not going to give a damn about health care. He'll cry about it, but he won't actually push for it and fight tooth and nail until we get it. And then also homelessness. 500,000 people are homeless, right? I think we should arm the homeless. When the people are making a joke, what we need is for black men, a bunch of black men to go out and buy a bunch of AR-15s. That would stop it. Maybe. That could be. That's what happened with California. But it would also happen with homeless. If the homeless had, that's just a psychopathic America. There was a woman who was killed by homeless, I think in California recently, just a couple days ago. She got killed by the homeless. Now people are, oh, you don't want to, you know, give them something good. But that wouldn't have happened if they had a home. He didn't have a home. She was helping him, and then, you know, she got killed by the person that she was helping. So that's unfortunate, and that sucks, and that's bullshit, and fuck that person for doing that. But if we would have had them in a home, right, if we fixed homelessness, if we gave a shit, but we can't do that. We're Americans. We can't give a shit about each other. We're dog-eat-dog capitalists. We need to point at that kid. You're a weird-looking kid and laugh and make fun. We need a homeless people so that way we feel better about ourselves. Oh, we got a house and you don't, so therefore we're better than you. So this is a pressing issue. If they had weapons, that would fix both of them. Homelessness would be fixed and our gun laws would get fixed. But right now, maybe gun laws might get fixed. Homeless, right, if they had weapons, that would get fixed right away because fear is more powerful than love. If we're waiting for America to love their homeless and for them to start building houses, it'll never happen. Americans don't give a flying fuck about each other. That's what Iceland, the woman in Iceland on Michael Moore's Where Should We, Invade Next? She said you couldn't pay her to go to the United States of America. We walk past each other when there's people that health care. His mom died of a flu. She was 68 years old, but a common flu. There's a pandemic. 4,000 Americans are dying every week, but they're not addressing this. Just like Ronald Reagan with AIDS, he waited 5 years. He waited till thousands of people have already died. Thousands of Americans have already died. But if you got health care, I mean, if you got the flu vaccine and you could afford the $116, Tamiflu, which is what that teacher died of, she didn't have $116. So health care is killing Americans by the thousands. Paid sick leave, right? You don't want the flu being spread. People stay home. Don't go anywhere. It is widespread all across the United States. I looked at the map of the CDC, and it's all over the place in every state. Only Guam and Hawaii are the only ones that's not afflicted by this outbreak of flu season, and it's not even peak flu season yet. There's already been 80-something children that have died specifically from the flu or complications of the flu, and you could die from either one. You could die, one-third die from the flu, the other ones die of pneumonia or some other thing. So these are things Jimmy Kimmel don't have to worry about. He don't have to worry about police brutality. He don't have to worry about lack of health care. Don't have to worry about, not having a goddamn home. And then he's not a Palestinian. So in 2014, he's not part of the 19 babies that got killed. 19 babies. I mean, America protected baby killers, literally murdered babies in their cradles. 108 preschoolers, 508 kids total. Elderly gentleman, and I talked to a female, and I don't know if perhaps because when you have babies you get health care and you get all these programs, or if you're older you get just a bunch. It's just they don't care about health care for everybody. They got health care, so they don't give a shit about anybody else if they got health care. And that's bullshit. That's white privilege. That is white stuck-up privilege. You're not the Palestinian babies being bombed. You're not the homeless who's getting spit on and attacked. You're not the people who are getting victimized because you smoked a joint. You smoked a joint, then you got beat up and victimized and kidnapped, and that's our society. That's what's right and good. And then, homelessness, police brutality, then you're not a Palestinian. So Jimmy Kimmel, the reason why we don't have universal health care, the reason why the Hillary Democrats don't want to include everybody, because there's 10% that don't have health care. They're opposed to universal health care because they have it. They don't have Democrats do every time. Hillary was for universal health care. Lobbyists paid her out. Then they pushed for Obamacare, so that's a sellout to the private insurance. We were forced to buy private insurance. Now there's no mandate, so now Obamacare was just a nice little exchange, and then also no pre-existing conditions. You could stay on your parents' thing for till 24. So a couple things had stayed over. But Hillary Democrats, they didn't have a public option, so they didn't have government health care. They didn't have single-payer government health care. They were opposed to it because Obamacare covered enough. It covered 80 to 90% of the people. Who gives a shit about the 10% remaining? That's bullshit. That's bullshit, America. It almost seems like you just need to get past, it's okay to care about people. It's okay to care about their welfare. Because caring about the homeless would have prevented that woman from getting killed. Caring about the poor and whether or not they get the flu is going to stop from your kids catching it and your grandparents. Or maybe going to go with he was obedient. Look how he operates in the courtroom, right? When he knows that he's done wrong, he's very just whatever you say. And I bet that's who he's been the entire time. Only every once in a while he just might say, hey, I need to be noticed. Hey, I need some attention. When I read he drew a swastika. That was one example where he drew a swastika. That James Alex Fields was a Trump MAGA guy. He was from Boone County. He was getting his ass kicked by his Christian mother. Spare the rod, spoil the child, right? So violence for young boys are totally fine. Society's going to turn their head on that. The reason why I also suspect that it happened, not only the 30 times she called the police, but one of the charges was either child/elder abuse. So perhaps he had called a couple times too. And if he didn't, then that just means what? The cops are just somebody to use against him. He could be the victim, and he should be defended. Someone should hear him out. If he's getting attacked and beat up and bullied all the time, being terrorized, those of you that are kind of saying, oh, why do you keep on, trying to put it on anybody? He did the crime, so he should do the time. I've already said that he deserves the death penalty, and then anybody that bullied him also should be held to account. Because those people who bullied him, if all he needed was a hug, but instead of giving him a hug, you spit in his face, So the D60, these teachers here, they're bragging about being a bitch. They're bragging about, anyways, the fighting. So, that's interesting, right? I got to be a bitch. This is a totalitarian society. So he goes to school and he's getting bitched at and yelled at and humiliated and mocked. I wonder why he didn't like school. In one school year, in middle school, they did say he got into a fight. He had unruly behavior, insults, profanity. What is that? What happened? Tell me specifically what happened. Was he being picked on? Did he start the last word? He said, "Oh shit!" Right? He dropped something and he said, "Shit." He insulted. "You're so dumb. You did this dumb thing." I mean, unruly behavior is just not specific enough. It just doesn't make me hate the guy. It just seems like in one school he's racking up all these numerous infractions. He said a cuss word. He had an insult. It's like, that's not a whole bunch of numerous infractions. There is another one that says by the 8th grade he's lashing out randomly. He's lashing out physically. He's randomly bumping other students in the hallways. So is that bullying, or is he like flirting? Is he just trying to like, hey, this is how I, interact with you. I like you. So it says he appeared to want to pick confrontations and fights, and at times breaking into profanity-laced tirades without any apparent trigger. So just out of nowhere, he'd be like, "Oh, motherfucker, cocksucker, motherfucker," and just out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever. That sounds like a bunch of fucking dicks just being like, "I don't know why he's doing what he's doing." It's a huge contradiction when it comes to violence. Violence is an assault, right? So if a cop uses violence, that's an assault. If one person injures another person, that's an assault. But for some reason, if you're a parent, you could smack your kid in the face, you could spit in their face, you could throw Kool-Aid. As long as the standard in Kentucky, at least, was don't leave any marks on them. So you could humiliate them, laugh at them, as long as you didn't bruise them or scratch them, you could get away with anything and all the kinds of corporal punishment ever. Spare the rod, spoil the child. But I think that's where he got his inclination towards violence. So he got expelled for a fight. So he had a girlfriend or something stalking her, who knows. He liked her, and she was hanging out with another guy. He goes up and he punches that guy in the face, right? Is that it? One single punch? I think that, he got expelled for it. But you're saying, well, see, one time, that's all you need is one violent episode. So if she's beating the living shit out of him on a day-to-day basis, that's more than just one. It sounds like to me the physical fights that he got into, he bumped into somebody, and then, he got into a fight with a guy he thought was taking his female. So that's it, one instance of violence, and then he's bumping into people, so he's like flirting. He just doesn't know how to properly interact with people. But okay, he touched people. He shouldn't have touched them. He's bumping into them, right? How dare you? Should keep your damn hands off of other people. But how come his mother's allowed to beat the shit out of him all live long day? Nobody gives a goddamn. Nobody gives a goddamn, if his mother beats the living shit out of him. And he was 19. If, get that man, I don't know. When it comes to psychoactive drugs, we, dope him up with a whole bunch of pills, right? But if he was to smoke a joint, then he would be behind bars. And then that's another thing. He might get away with all this shit because he's autistic. 3 years old, he was developmentally disabled. So did we, as a society, did we make the necessary accommodations for our autistic, our autistic kids? And if we're not, making accommodations for our autistic kids, I just don't think we have enough room. It seems to me that her protection was his demise. So he didn't have the police protection. She did. But she was hit, she could hit him all day. I don't know 100% whether or not she did. I'm guessing 80%. Well, let's, for the sake of argument, she's allowed to. She would have got away with it. And that's a perfect self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You got a slave in the slave quarter. You're beating the shit out of the slave. And then when the slave goes out and hurts somebody, you're like, well, see, you messed up. Well, what do you mean? You've been putting violence on me my whole life, not me. That was an innocent person. You didn't, go after the one that actually did it to you. So she beats the shit out of him, tells the world, oh, my God, I'm the victim. I just don't know what I can do with him. He's just out of my hands. I don't believe any of that as if he's actually, becoming a man in his 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old. But up until then, she can just scare him and just like she's bigger. So actually he wants her to love him so she could just convince him to do it. So, but if he's getting, to a place where he's bigger and then he is pushing her around, then she has to do something else. One teacher said she was afraid that he was in her class. She's so afraid. He was probably terrified of her, right? At any moment, at any time, she's just going to say, go do this, and then she has the power of the state. So in any moment, right, she can, one teacher in D60 said she's a total bitch. So maybe that's what she was afraid of. Oh, my God, this guy might actually attack me back if I'm a total, if I bully him and insult him, if I'm a totalitarian oppressor, if I don't respect the students' autonomy and dignity. It's just, we got to respect each other. Thing that I didn't like, I don't like him picking on the animals, but then I wonder how, bad the extent was. He's taking a picture of dead lizards and stuff. But we live, if there are slaughterhouses, there will be battlefields. So KFC ran out of chicken. He wants to kill some chicken, so he'd be perfect for the slaughterhouses that, finance KFC. And then shooting rats, the squirrels, they're squirrel hunters and stuff, picking on things. The one part that actually really stuck with me, that he would take a stick and rabbit holes and he would just, smash the animals that were living in these holes and kill what was inside the holes. So that's sick. So that's a sadistic person that does that. But people in slaughterhouses, do they enjoy their work? The soldiers, do they enjoy when they're shooting people? That sheriff in Tennessee, he loves that shit. Killing adult men for a traffic infraction. The cost of that man's life was a quarter. Just one bullet. To say that kid is perfect, he's not. He's very bad. And that's the other thing. Everybody keeps saying the kid. If you keep calling him the kid, you can't say that he deserves a death penalty because he's a kid. And if he's autistic, then that means he's going to get away with all of this. So if he was autistic, if he was diagnosed with whatever and he should have been, paid attention, yeah, I totally agree with all the people's arguments. But if he's just a kid who's got ADHD or just as active and he's more aggressive because he's a male, then that means we're victimizing boys. We're victimizing our boys. So, Al Franken, there was no Al Franken level of sexual assault. I never heard that, never saw any pictures. I heard he might have been stalking. He might not have got the picture. Maybe they were broken up. Maybe she didn't even like him. But he didn't assault women like Al Franken did. But Al Franken was for gun control. So a little bit of a bunch of nations, like 100 nations around the world that have outlawed corporal punishment, because it's obviously wrong. You shouldn't beat up your own kid anyways. It just goes against common sense, rationality. You're beating up your own. That's the person who's going to take your place, and you're like treating them like dog shit. It's like you're ruining your own kids. Either way, he won't ever get spanked again. As an adult, we don't believe in spanking any adults. You could get caned in Singapore. If you go to Aruba, you can't beat up your kids, but in America, you're allowed to beat up your kids. In fact, Scott Tipton passed a law to make sure that farmers can still beat up their kids. The child labor laws are exempted when it comes to farmers. Scott Tipton passed that law. So we respect adults, even adults who have murdered 17 individuals, 17 of our kids. We will not spank the adults. We respect their dignity. James Holmes, he's eating on Colorado's dime. Lady that was going on and on about how we are just letting these kids just run rampant, and then they're playing video games, and then the reality TV, and she's blaming everything except for her own oppression. She wants more violence to happen, and then people were, just loved it. Oh my God, that's what we need, more violence against our boys, more violence, more hatred, and let's hit them before, but what if that's what's causing it? James Holmes, he's eating on Colorado's dime. James Holmes, Colorado right now, taxpayers of Colorado are paying for James Holmes' food and his electric and his sleeping quarters. He's got a house now. He's got a home now, right? So we paid for his home and his food and electric and his sleeping quarters after he murdered a bunch of kids. And we'll never spank James Holmes for his bad behavior. How will he learn if we don't spank these adults for the crimes that they commit? Isn't that weird? Kids can get hit.